I was like, what do you do? What am I supposed to do now? Had all this like extra time, and I was like, uh, I don't know what to do. And then the longer I got sober, and I felt comfortable being around people that drink, and I would go out with them, I was that guy that had the energy, that was out late, always having fun, doing no matter what it is. It's always fun to me.
Hi, all, back from my daily podcast recording. This is a conversation I had with Justin. He's an American, but now living in Southeast Asia. Absolute legend, probably my favorite conversation I've had so far. He's a super nice guy, worked in children's support services, previously worked as a prison correction officer, then also spent time inside as well for mistakes he made due to alcohol addiction, which we get into as well as the loss of friends as you move away from alcohol as you get older and the need to find new friends. It's a super interesting conversation that's been relevant for me actually right now. I hope you enjoy it. Please don't forget I'm giving away a pair of tickets to see Oasis in London next summer. All you have to do is be subscribed to my channel by the end of May 2025, nothing else. I'll pick someone at random to win 2 standing tickets. You've just got to be subscribed. Hit it, it's down below. As always, I'm recording daily and uploading podcasts on all the biggest platforms. If you think you'd like to come on and talk to me and have a conversation about your issues, what you're struggling with, or if you need advice, free life coaching, whatever, please hit me up. You can find my email in the video description and we can have a chat. Thanks a lot. Enjoy my talk with Justin. You were talking about the dissolution or dissolving of your friendship group because it revolved around drinking, and how those guys all seemed like idiots to you when you were the sober one at the bar and they were all drunk, and you realized that you yourself had been that drunk idiot, and also that you didn't have a lot to relate to them, that you found that all you had in common was drinking. And I'm going through that similar phase at the moment with friends, this group of friends who I'm slowly moving away from because all they do is party and there isn't enough real conversation. And partly I think that's because they're not very emotionally mature and they're not ready to talk about things deeply, as I think a lot of young to middle-aged men aren't. They're not so in touch with their feelings. And
Right.
I see the similarities between you and I in that sense. And what I was going to say was I only started drinking when I was 18. I joined this new friendship group and they'd all been drinking in the UK from like 14, 15. It was the cool thing to do. And I only joined that group at 16, 17 and then didn't drink. I was already an outsider. And then at 18, I started drinking just because I felt the peer pressure and I was a pushover. I was a people pleaser and I felt socially awkward. And I found that I would just drink to get drunk. And that's the difference between my friends or my partner or normal people who are quite happy to have a glass of wine or a couple of beers because they enjoy the taste. For me, I was like that buzz of getting a bit messed up and getting out of your head. Can you relate to that?
Yeah, and just kind of getting out of your shell a little bit, so you can just kind of feel like you can be you, or have, you just relax a little bit, and it works. It works fantastically for that. I mean, it's just that's what it's for, right? I mean, that's how it works, is that lower inhibitions, so we kind of are able to get out of this kind of prison we put ourselves in because of the way we think. We overthink everything. We don't feel like we're part of anything, so we kind of keep ourselves restrained. Once we start drinking, all bets are off.
And I've always had a couple of friends in my life who have never drank, and they're always the life and soul of the party. I've got a friend called Brooke from the US. She's a nutter, 35, never touched a drop of alcohol in her life, but she's always the one dancing until 5 a.m, just being an utter lunatic. And I've always admired those people because I thought, wow, how do they do it? And realistically, it's that development within yourself that you need to realize you don't need alcohol to be that person. You just need to unlock it for yourself, I think.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. No, at least in my experience, you're exactly right. So right for you right now, I've been sober a long time. We're talking, 12, 13 years.
12 years.
And
right?
I forget what it's like. And I have to be around dipshits before I remember. I'm like, yeah, I remember why I don't drink, and then, but when you're around what you would call normal people, just we put that in quotes because
Yeah.
none of us are really all that normal and we don't know how to define that. But when you're around normal people, you're right. They don't get sloppy drunk. They just have a few drinks. They're good. They might get a buzz on, but then they know that's when it's time to stop. And in cases what it sounds like me and you, there was no stop. There's a saying. It goes, "One's too many and a thousand's never enough." That's a saying in AA.
Yeah, true.
And
That's so true.
for people like me, I experienced that. But what I can say is when I first started drinking, I was like, what do you do? What am I supposed to do now? Had all this like extra time, and I was like, uh, I don't know what to do. And then the longer I got sober, and I felt comfortable being around people that drink, and I would go out with them, I was that guy that had the energy, that was out late, always having fun, doing no matter what it is. It's always fun to me. And I turned into that guy, and I'm really proud of who I become once I got sober. But before that, it certainly, anybody seen me 20, 15 years ago or something like that, certainly would not think I was a good guy. But that changed over the years.
I don't necessarily. I don't think you're a bad guy. I think
Behaved
my
poorly.
guess,
How's that? Was behaved poorly. I was a very poorly behaved guy there.
because you make dumb decisions when you're drunk, right? And
Yeah, yeah, and sober too, because you view things differently. There's another saying. Now, I have a social work degree and a lot of with a minor in psychology. There's a lot of terms that we use for people who end up in prison. So a lot of inmates get diagnosed with personality disorders like antisocial personality disorder, and people think, oh, I'm antisocial because I don't want to go out. I like being in my house alone. That's not antisocial. Antisocial is like against society, so they're just kind of go against everything. Um,
hmm,
but oh shit, I forgot where I was going with that. Oh,
personality disorders in prison.
yeah, it was something before that. I was going somewhere with that. Oh, criminal thinking. It was the criminal thinking piece, and
Okay, tell me.
so somebody who might have like kind of like criminal thinking might be like, oh, I am drinking and I'm going to drive. My blood alcohol content is over 0.08 over the legal limit, but I'm 6'5" and 280 pounds. I can
Hmm,
drink more than the 140-pound woman, you know. And
yeah.
for you guys out there that are listening in other countries, very heavy kilos. We don't do kilos. I don't do kilo. I still haven't done the conversion yet, but
I think 140 pounds is like 50 kilograms, something like that.
yeah. So they're much bigger. So in their mind, they rationalize it and to get away to say, oh, this is okay because I'm this way, or this is okay to steal from the company because they're a multi-billion dollar company, and it's okay to steal. So they rationalize this kind of like criminal thinking, and that's what I did. I did a lot of that when I was younger and active in my addiction. One, to fund it, and two, you just kind of just develops on its own. I think it's just kind of the nature of the beast. Not saying that everybody develops criminal thinking, but it's certainly kind of like a feature of it.
I think it enhances some of the negative thinking that you've picked up from when you were younger, when
Hmm.
you were a child, is my understanding. And
Learned behavior. It's
well,
all learned. Yeah.
yeah, and I think we'll dig into that. We will dig into that. I'm confident that mental health, addictions, depression, the things that we struggle with are all as a result of our experiences in childhood and things that have gone wrong or things that we've been through as a kid. And I'd love to dive into that with you. But we'll stay on prison for a second because you used to be a prison officer for what, 2, 3 years, did you say?
From '04 to '09, so almost 5 years,
So
just under
5 years.
5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And then
Can you tell me
and
about?
then I got, oh, good.
No, go on. No, you go.
Oh, and then I was going to say, then I was on one side of the fence, and then I was on the other side of the fence, which was a very good experience on both ends. And I would stand behind that. I think every single correctional officer needs to go and do time so they know what it's like, because you have no idea. sometimes just getting a towel so you can dry yourself, how important that is when you're in prison. And it takes them a week to get it. That's what happened to me. I had to drip dry for an entire week, and I would ask and ask and ask, wouldn't get it. But when I started punching my door and screaming, "Hey, you motherfucker!" and just start punching on the doors, guess what? I got a towel. Shut me up. So they reinforce these really bad behaviors unwilling or unwittingly, because they're
Unknowingly.
yeah, unknowingly, because they're just trying to. The quiet ones don't get what you know get
Really?
what they need, but these loud guys, just shut them up, and that was my experience. And I wasn't a very good correctional officer back in the time. I was only 19. You know,
Okay, so you're a kid. But I
I was
think,
young.
and again, addiction, mental health, depression, inmates or people that have committed crime and have gone into prison, I'm so confident that they've also been through some terrible things in their life. And what I imagine what they really need is just a bit of compassion and someone to talk to and someone who might understand them. Because when you come into the situation where I didn't know this, where you have to be punching your door or screaming and swearing at someone to get what you want, everyone just has to do that to try and survive because it really is a hellhole. You're locked away in a small cell, I'm guessing, for
Mm.
a long period of time per day. And yeah, it isn't a free life. It isn't an easy life. So you just need the little things that might make it a little bit better for you. I'm sorry to hear that you went through that and
Yeah,
try to
but
spend a
the
week getting a
thing
towel.
was, yeah, and the thing that was great about it though, in retrospect, I'm not ashamed of everything that happened. In retrospect, it was a very positive experience, because I may not have been free in a lot of ways, but I'll tell you what, I got to a point where I didn't want to leave, and it was only 9 months. I didn't have to worry about food. I could just wake up and do whatever I want whenever I wanted. My laundry was given to me, food was delivered. They told me when to get up, when to go to bed, what I can and cannot do. And when you just follow the rules, life is easy, man. Life was easy in there. There was some scary things that did happen. Like I watched the dude get beat to death, and then there was this one guy came in and they thought he was a rat, and that was a whole mess, and that part was scary. But I mean, that stuff happens out in the real world anyways, you know. And I it was a really very positive experience for me, in spite of not getting a towel, and I don't get a choice in what food I get to eat. But that meant nothing, because I didn't mind it. I didn't mind any food. I'm not very picky.
Maybe it was healing for you uh, in some way. Is that fair?
Yeah, I
It's
think
difficult because
I
we
think
spoke
it's
about it last night in an unrecorded version, so viewers don't have the same level of detail that I
mhm.
did. This was it 2012 you went down.
Yeah, I think it was before that, actually. I think it was 2010, but it was right around there, something like that. I don't remember exactly.
You told me, and I'll let you. I'll paraphrase for you, but you got drunk. You went to an ex girlfriend's house, had a falling out with her because there was still some photos of another ex partner of hers on the wall.
Mm.
You didn't like it. She reacted badly. You decided to get really drunk on a bottle of Jack. You left your keys at her house. Went back to get the keys. She wouldn't give you the keys. She was being a bit out of order, it sounds. And you made the mistake of breaking in to get the keys and cut yourself up on the glass. That obviously freaked them out. They called the police. The police came. There was an altercation, a bit of a scrap, and you got tasered, came to, and realized you'd fucked up. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do want to say that she wasn't acting out of order in any capacity. I think,
I
um,
apologize.
yeah, yeah, and I just want to clear it more for the viewers, because I don't want to sound like I'm victim blaming by any means. But I
It's
will
your
say,
story. You tell the
in
truth.
her mind, at least in her mind, I feel like she deeply believed that she was doing the right thing by preventing me from having my keys. I don't think it was
Oh,
a
true, because you
malicious
wanted to
act.
drive, right?
Yep, yep. I wanted to drive, and I think in her mind, was maybe protecting me. And for a long time, I did blame her, because I was like, man, if somebody's sitting there just saying, "Hey, give me my fucking keys," and you're trashing the house, give them those fucking keys. That's his consequence, and I did blame her for a long time, and I think a lot of people would see in that situation, why didn't you give him the fucking keys? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. He does not have the right to break into my house. Doesn't have the right to knock over my fridge and break my microwave and yell and scream and scare everybody in the house. There's no excuse for that. You know, that's I would hear that all the time when I tell that story, and it would, long time I believed that, but then and having time to think about it, no, I'm not gonna allow that to continue. You know what I mean? At least for me, what other people decide they feel about it is on them. But I always try and to clarify that for that reason.
I
But
understand.
but yes, you paraphrased that very well. I think that was pretty much summed the whole thing up.
So that's why you went down. But you'd already been a correctional officer for 5 years, and as you said, you'd been on the other side. And do you think that your experience, having seen it from the other side, to then go down for it was about 9 months, a year, you said, did your experiences on the other side as a correctional officer betray your behaviors on the inside and make you behave a certain way because you'd seen for 5 years how inmates would behave? Or do you think
Yeah, I think
you
I fell
tried to
right
be
in.
well behaved?
No, I definitely broke the rules, and I definitely did things that I shouldn't have been doing, and I acted in ways that were uncharacteristic of me, but it felt like a last resort. It really did. It felt like a last resort. Like, hey, for instance, I'll give you an example. One time,
Please.
my cellmate took a shit, and he ate something that was not agreeing with him, and it clogged the toilet, and the toilet started flooding. Well, when the toilet flooded, we were getting whatever they were doing above would come down and go through our toilet and spill over. So there is literally shit and piss all over our cell. And I'm pounding, I'm pushing the button like I should, Hey, can you get somebody in here? And I'm gagging because it was so bad. I'm just like, ugh, ugh, help. I need to just open the door because there's nobody out there. Just let us get out. Couldn't breathe. Nobody would respond. Nobody would respond. Kept pushing it, please, please. And we're just gagging. It was terrible. Finally, the guy upstairs says, start kicking your door and I'll help you. And sure enough, I just put my back to the door and I just, from behind with my flat of my foot, just started kicking it like this. And it got the whole entire cell block rocking. We were all just smashing things up in there trying to get some attention, to get us some attention. And 1 minute, 30 seconds, they were in there. And they come storming in there. Get out, get down, get out of there. So we get out, lay down on the ground, got exactly what we wanted. Got what we needed. I shouldn't say it was wanted. We got
No,
exactly what we
what
needed.
you
We needed to get the
deserved.
hell out of there. Yeah, what I deserved. I think that is a very good way. What I deserved. Yeah. And
This was at San
uh,
Quentin, right?
no, this was at a county. This was
Okay.
at county. That particular incident was at county. San Quentin was much different. We had a lot more. Believe it or not, it was a lot more freedom over there in San Quentin. So you got everything. Everything was all your needs were met over there better than they were at county for sure.
Okay. I've never been to prison yet, and touch wood, I won't have to. But it makes it sound like I've done something wrong. Touch wood, I never do. But
I'm ready to go whenever.
yeah,
Hit me.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hiding. In my head, there would be guards at least patrolling or in the area who might hear you or might listen to you. Where are the guards that should have been there to help you in this
Yeah, I'm
situation,
not
and
really.
why were they not there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm not really sure. They would do their rounds every once in a while, and they would just come in, and check in on us, and then go to the other one. I'm not really sure where they were at, if they were responding to something else. I think that's a good point too, because I know they are busy, you know, um, but they could have been
Are
responding
they?
to something else.
Or
I
are
don't
they
know.
sat
Well,
playing
I'll say from
cards?
experience, no. I'll say from experience,
Yeah.
probably not. You know, and a lot of it is just like fuck them. That was kind of the attitude that I experienced on the other end. Was like, fuck them. They're the ones that got themselves in here, and And one thing about the prison, it did a really good job, I thought. They said their punishment is being here. You're not here to punish them. Their punishment is just being here. And I think a lot of other COs that were at that prison I worked at definitely thought it took it upon themselves to be the punisher, so to speak.
So, a few things. I was afraid you were going to say that, and I do worry about the type of character that is attracted to going and working within a prison in that sense. I had a friend at college, 18, 19, growing up, and his stepfather was a correctional officer, and my friend said that he was mean and cruel and horrible when he came home, and then as soon as he stopped working there, within a couple of months, he was a completely different person. And I think, unfortunately, the stuff that's going on inside there, I mean, it being prison, you naturally will attract some people who have got struggles, who are aggressive, who are mean, who have committed some serious crimes, who will steal, whatever. I don't want to say the worst of humanity because that's not the truth, but some people struggling with some stuff. And I guess the whole circle, it brings out the worst in people. And I think some correctional officers might, I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, would really get a kick out of having the opportunity to bully, be cruel, be mean, do nasty shit to people, say
Yeah.
awful things. And is that fair?
Oh, I absolutely. I think in working at a prison is an easy route to go. I mean, for me, I was 19 years old. How I got my job is I knew this guy. I used to work with him. Or when I was really young, I was probably 14, 15. I would help him. He rented our property for slaughtering pigs, and I would help him. And that's how he knew me from. And he's like, "Hey, man," he caught up with me when I was 19. He's like, "Hey, I can get you a job at the prison if you want to come out and have a good job." I was like, "A prison?" It's like, "Yeah, it's not. You'll like it. It's a good job. It's a state job. Blah blah blah." It's like, "All right, I'll give it a shot." And then that's how I got in. Literally, just pointed at me and said, "Come on down." That's how I got started. So it's
The
the
person I've
barrier. The barrier is very low.
person I've got to know now, you, is a very kind, gentle soul, is open, empathetic. Seems like a really good human being. The person at 19, obviously you're a kid. I remember me at 19, I was a dickhead, and I wasn't a good person. Were you different at 19? Do
Um,
you think?
No, I was drunk. I was drunk, and I've never been in a fight my entire life. I've gotten my ass kicked. I've gotten my ass kicked a lot, but I never fought back. I just
No.
never. I've always been generous and kind, but there's been times where I've done shitty things, And I think if you asked anybody in my past, kind of overall, the kind of human being that I have been way back, they'd say I've always been generous and kind. But there's a few people out there would say I'm an asshole, you know?
Well, you can never please everybody, and unfortunately, people's
Right.
opinions are formed based on what they see of you. And if you see someone who's seen you when you've been an asshole, they'll think you are an asshole. In my
Exactly. Yep.
case,
Yep.
in my case, I spent most of my life very depressed and unhappy and miserable and feeling sorry for myself simply because there was no one else to feel sorry for me, and my life was fucking awful as
Yeah.
a result of what I'd been through. I think if you went and asked people who knew me, they wouldn't necessarily have positive things to say. That he was always sad, he was mopey, he wasn't fun to be around. And I wasn't because of all of that. It's nice to know that you have always kept up your humanity and been a good person. And it's nice that people see that. I think the difference between you and I is that people probably didn't see that I'm a good person and
Oh, I see. That's
didn't know
that.
who I
I'm
am. It's
sorry to
taken
hear
me
that because
time to
that's
know that
really
I'm a good
hard.
person. Do you know what I mean? Well, no,
Yeah, that
I didn't mean
that
to make it
sucks.
about me. I'm just, this is,
No, no,
well,
that is.
that's
I think that's a good point. I think that's a good thing to bring up because, you know, I've always been told I've been a good kid, from a lot of people. Like I respected adults. I was always please and thank you. And, even when we were in school, teachers and different people, and I'm speaking for my brothers and sisters, or my brothers and sister as well. People would come up and say, "Man, to my parents, you have really good kids." And I've been fortunate to have a very, very loving mother when I was young, a very affectionate, and I was always taken care of. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that that's why I've always been kind of generous, is because of the environment that I grew up as a child. And you kind of hinted at it earlier about these traumas that people experience in their childhood affecting them as adults. And are you familiar with ACEs? ACE,
Yeah,
adverse childhood experience? Yeah.
the ACEs test is a test you can do. I think it's 12 questions to understand how poor your childhood or your upbringing might have been. And if you say yes or no to certain questions, you gain a point.
Yeah.
And so the maximum score is 12, minimum 0.
Yeah.
If you're at 12, then damn, I feel
You're
very sorry for
screwed. Yeah, you're like
you. Yeah.
basically you're just doomed. I know, and it takes a lot of work to get through those. But yeah, and it doesn't. We're talking like I think it's is it 9 or 12? I don't remember, but it's only like 3 or 4. If you have 3 or 4 aces, you're susceptible to be addicted to drugs or have addiction problems by
What
300
was your
fold or
score?
something like that. It's something ridiculous, you know.
What was your score?
Oh God, I don't remember. Geez, I took it when I was when I went to college, and I don't remember. It was pretty high though. It was really
We,
actually
sh-
pretty high, and
we should we
I
should we should do it, and then maybe I'll flash up your score on the screen. Mine is like 7 or 8. It's bad.
yeah. See, now that's like
So
way up there. That's way up there, and that I mean that you're susceptible to a lot of things when you get older, like stroke and heart disease and addiction being another one. All these health
yeah,
complications kind of
yeah.
stem from these ACEs that people experience when they're kids. And you definitely know when I worked at now used to work at children's group homes for probably about 7 years on and off. There is definitely a correlation from the kids that have certain behaviors as children, what the family life is like, and
Mhm.
probably they're just future inmates is all it is. And I am a firm believer that if you take a child and you give them everything that they need early on enough before 8 o'clock or 8 years old, 8 o'clock, 8 years old, you can give them everything that they need: food, shelter, love,
Yeah,
care, and
yeah,
support. That they're
yeah.
going to turn out to be productive members of society. I believe that.
Yes.
I don't think there's anybody that's just like is born the Antichrist. I don't believe that for a second. I don't think it's
No.
it's um, all all natural. I think
It's
it's
it's not
all
it's
nurture.
not genetic. It's
I
environmental.
agree.
Unfortunately, I don't understand why society doesn't understand that, and I think a lot of it has to do with the stigma, and that's why I want to have these conversations to shed light on it. I'm sorry, I'm stuck on the idea of strokes and heart attacks and stuff. It's another reason why I want to do this, because I don't think I'm going to live till I'm 80. I want to talk about these things now and help people now while I
Mhm.
can. Flipping back to talking about inmates who have very high ACEs scores, I couldn't agree more. And it's devastating to know that people on the inside who have done wrong and have to go to prison to serve time are just being locked away like caged animals, not being given a towel to dry themselves, shit and piss flooding around their cell, when really, as you and I know, these are damaged people is the wrong word, but damaged
Mhm.
people who simply need help and compassion and some understanding. I'm desperate for this podcast to go well so that I can go into prisons and interview people and have these sorts of conversations and prove that we're right, because at the end of the day, they're people just like you and I who have struggled. You said you had a very nurturing mother. In contrast, I didn't have a nurturing mother, and my father enabled her behaviour, so I was kind of
Mhm.
defenceless from both fronts. But you said you had a very nurturing mother. But what happened?
So yeah, so I had a very nurturing mother, and she's very loving and caring. Something changed probably when I was 12 or 13 years old, and I don't know what exactly happened, but she became incredibly abusive, uh, very manipulative, and um, uh, I think she was into drugs, and things just spiraled out of control after that. And if you are to look at our family, and you take me, my two brothers who are younger than me, and then my sister, and you see, since I'm the oldest, I definitely have the most compassion and empathy in the family. There's no question. And then you go down to my next brother, and he's a lot like I am, really, really affectionate towards his kids, compassionate, empathetic. Then you go to my brother, who's a little bit more harder, and but still has that generosity aspect. And then you see my sister, who's the youngest, and yes, she still has glimmers of that empathy and generosity, or what, all those virtuous traits. But then she sometimes can just get nasty, and she's in the pit of her addiction. Like, it's, every time we think it's a rock bottom, something terrible happens where she's just an inch away from death. We think that's the rock bottom. It turns out it can get worse every time, and so
Sorry
at
to
least
hear.
that's just an anecdote. Yeah, it sucks. It really sucks. It's hard to live through too, but sometimes you just get to a point where you're just like, you write them off. You stop caring. And I hate to say
I
that about my sister, but it's kind of where we got, where you
no,
have to
I
go, where you have to
I
go.
completely understand. How old is she? How old are your brothers? Because you're
So
40
it's,
and your
yeah,
brothers.
so it's 2 years apart. We're all 2 years. So it'd be 40, 38, 36, and then 34.
She's a year and a bit younger than me. I mean, I've got two
Yeah.
sisters, and we're not close, and I don't think we ever will be close, and that's for a couple of different reasons. I mean, one sister's 18 months younger, and the other's like 8 years younger, and that one that's 18 months, she grew up in the environment where you're very cruel, you're mean, you're nasty to me. That's what she learned. Like the way we behave is to be cruel and mean and horrible, and that's her behavior. She is very cruel and mean and nasty to
Mm,
me. She presents this wonderful, fun, outgoing personality to other people, but to me, she's just vicious and cruel and mean and horrible. She also struggles, in my opinion, with alcohol. Has her issues, but is too I don't want to say narcissistic. She's unable to see that she has her problems, that she needs to grow.
yeah.
My other
Yeah.
sister, again, we're not close. Um, she's mean and aggressive to me, but that's also partly my fault because when she was 8 years younger, I kind of bullied her a bit, and
Mm,
that was as a result of who I was. That I grew up knowing pain, knowing anger, knowing meanness, saying vicious things, physically hitting each other. And so that relationship, we also will not be there. So I completely understand on your side. I'm just sorry that you can relate, it
yeah.
sucks.
Yeah, it does. It certainly does. But, she's her own person, but
So you
the
have no idea what
correlation's there.
happened?
The correlation's there. Yeah, she just went through.
Yeah.
She was young. She was really young when when shit hit the fan for the family. Like when my mom started kind of losing her mind. My dad, he was just kind of like this person that just existed in the family, and she went through the brunt of it. She got the worst of it at a very young age. I was a teenager. I could leave. I can just leave the house. I can go stay at a friend's. She couldn't get away. I
Yeah.
could, you know.
My
So
my sister
that's
the
what
same.
happened.
My sister the same. I mean, I left. I basically got thrown out at 18, 19, and I bailed. I left. And I was, in hindsight, it was really a good thing for me because I needed to get
Mm,
out of that hellhole. But she was trapped there being 8 years younger. And then suddenly my mum and dad got divorced and there was no one no one else to be mean to. So she took the brunt of it. And
right.
she started to see what I had been through. And in some ways, occasionally we relate about that, but also there's a lot of anger and resentment that she got put through that. And so, again, we don't have a relationship because I was mean to her, because she learned that we're mean to Christopher. And then the resentment at her getting her comeuppance, for want of a better word, when me and my other sister had left home, and it's sad for both of us that we don't have that relationship. We're very
Yeah.
similar in that sense, like
Yeah.
boarding guys, brothers and sisters, addictions, odd family relationships. Funny how we can relate. I'm curious to know what you think happened that set your mum off, for want of a better word. Do you know? Can you
Um.
elaborate on that?
Yeah. So I've dug deep, or pretty deep into this, and I think one was she started taking ephedrine. Now ephedrine right around late. 90s was legal. You could just go down and buy ephedrine, which is meth. It was
Okay, I was
marketed
going to
as
ask.
an alert pill, and she would she would take those constantly. She'd take those all the time, and I think that's where it began. There was times where we'd go to bed and as kids, and we'd wake up to a whole different house. Like the walls were painted, furniture was rearranged, everything was just out of control. I mean, it was just bizarre, and stuff just didn't make sense, and it was just from those ephedrine. And then
Wow.
she went and saw a doctor, and she got on Prozac. And Prozac, according to her, worked very, very well. It was kind of a miraculous drug for her. The studies show something similar, but she, when she got off of them, it was like her anger was out of this world. Like she would throw things, smash things up, and flash forward to me as an adult. What happened? Same exact thing. But yeah, it
So
was it was just a
Prozac is
mixture.
an SSRI. It's an antidepressant.
Yeah, correct,
So
correct. Yeah, yeah.
do you think she was mixing Prozac with ephedrine at the same time?
She probably was, but we we correlated even as kids. We started kind of figuring out when she wouldn't take her medicine and when she would, and we would make comments to her. It was like, "Did you take your medicine?" Because she would just be angry, just fucking vicious,
And that would set her
vicious.
off, though, wouldn't it?
Well, no, she actually the pill thing was okay, but it was just like we weren't the cleanest kids. No kids are like that clean anyways. But if the house was a mess, she'd just be mad, and she'd slam things. She'd take the cupboards and she'd slam the doors. And we're like, what happened? Why are you mad? She's like, I'm not mad, and just screaming. And we're like, clearly you are. It's like you are fucking pissed. And it was like that was how we had to walk. I mean, we would be. I was never home. When I was
As the
13, 14
eldest.
years old, I was outside all the time. I was never home. I was away because you never knew what that what was going to set off the bomb.
My something similar, except I would hide in my room. I'd play computer games and listen to music, watch TV or something. We talk about addiction.
Yeah.
Screens can still be somewhat of an addiction for me. I'm grateful for this podcast that I can throw myself in because it means I'm not distracted by other crap on some screen somewhere. But no, I can totally relate of
Healthy
hiding
outlet.
and
Healthy outlet.
well, yeah, I guess so. I can
Yeah.
totally relate to hiding from the abuse or the danger, and it's just easier to hide and run away. I struggle with freeze response. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. That was my way of dealing with my situations. That I'd freeze up and I'd hide and I'd go into my shell. Maybe it sounds like you were flight and you'd run away. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess. I mean, yeah, I would say so. I mean, I would always um, fawn, fawn definitely, because there was times where I just sit there and look as pathetic as possible. There were times like
It
that.
worked, didn't it?
Yeah, and yeah, it does because my mom had a very, very strong maternal instinct. When she sees somebody hurting, it didn't matter what they did to her or to anybody. She could really, really recognize that somebody was hurting emotionally. Physically, a little different, but emotionally, if someone was hurting, she can swoop right in and nurture that that wound right away, you know. But uh, so the fawn thing worked well for us, and still to this day, I sometimes when I talk to her. She's still very critical of me and still really aggressive. And to this day, I'll fake being upset in order to kind of appeal to that softer side, just to be able to get through to her and talk to her.
It's odd, right? I mean, and not to be mean to you, but it's somewhat manipulative, right?
It is, yeah, it is
It,
maladaptive. I'd say maladaptive is what the
maladaptive is a
term I would
better word.
use. But
Well,
but it is manipulative because I know what I'm doing.
yeah,
Maladaptive I think is more of a subconscious kind of thing, whereas with
sure.
me it is manipulative because I know exactly what I'm doing.
But it's difficult because and especially with someone who's older and someone that you've known your whole life, getting them to change their behavior is
I was just gonna
almost
bring that up.
impossible. Yeah. Well, then go on. The
That's one of
floor's
those.
yours.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just gonna bring that up, and I think that's a really good point. That me trying to change her, and me trying to say, hey, this is the mother you should have been to me my whole entire life. That's never gonna happen, and I still hold on to that. That still affects me to this day because when she acts a certain way that I expect a mother to act, it hurts, and she doesn't
Mm.
act that way. It hurts. And so it's hard. Oh gosh, scared me. Yeah. But yeah, it
Do you want
hurts.
to take a break?
And
You want to take a second?
oh yeah, we
You
can. Yeah,
can. You can. We'll have to edit this anyway. Go on. Take a second.
yeah. Okay, just a second.
Hey man, how are you? Yeah, me as well.
I'm back. I was trying to multitask because my girlfriend was. I knew she was coming over.
This isn't like over flames tendon over you. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, so I'm in a similar boat. I feel you. Look, sorry, I saw you called. I actually can't talk right now. I really threw myself into my podcasting, and I'm doing an interview as we speak. I can call you after 2. Is that okay? But just know that I'm thinking of you. I'm sorry I didn't reply on Friday. I got distracted in myself. Been doing a lot of shit, and I forgot I didn't reply to you. I apologise, and I'm grateful for you. And you were there for me, and I want to be there for you. Can I maybe come over this afternoon? Thanks, man. I appreciate you. I'll be in touch. Bye, pal. Okay.
All right. I was trying to be stealthy, and I was trying to send her a message because I knew my
I
girlfriend
heard the
was coming
timing. Don't
over.
worry, it's fine.
Yeah, and I was trying to be
Let's
stealthy, and I was like trying to message her and say, "Hey, be quiet when you come in."
shut the
And
fuck
right
up.
as I
Yeah.
was about to send that, she showed up. Yeah, yeah,
Do you remember what you talked about before you started typing? Because maybe I'll just edit that whole 2 minutes.
yeah. It was
We were talking about your
uh,
mum and addiction, change in behavior, maladaptive fawning,
yeah. I was
affection.
talking about being manipulative. Okay, I know where I'm at now. I'll probably repeat
Um,
myself. Talking about how I had an expectation about how a mother should be versus how she
correct.
acted towards me, and it
Yeah.
hurt. It hurt. Yeah. So yeah, it hurt when she would act a certain way towards me, in a different way than how I think a mother should act towards their children. And I think even as an adult to this day, I still kind of strive for that motherly, that maternal, caring, supportive person that I'll probably never have. And going through therapy and all that stuff and talking about it, it just never seems to go away. It always seems to be forever present, you know? And
It's odd. I have got to a place, maybe slightly differently, because it was different for me. I never really knew my mother as this caring, nurturing person. I always knew her as my bully and as the enemy, for want of a better word. And I think we've spoken maybe 4 times in 8, 9 years now, and I haven't spoken to her in
holy
three and a half.
cow.
Last time we spoke, she said, I think we should never talk again, and we haven't. And at first it was really painful, but I really see it as a blessing now that I don't have that guilt of having to maintain a relationship that's not healthy for me. And I'm glad for me, and I hope you can get there. I know that I will never have that nurturing, loving, kind person that I think a mother should be. I'm comfortable with it. It's just who I am, and I'm very grateful in a sense because it's made me who I am. Um,
Right, right.
I'm just sorry that that you're still struggling with that hurt.
Yeah. Well, she's always still present in
Hmm.
very much present in my life, and having her at a distance is much better than being around her. Being 5,000 miles away, and
Hmm.
it's a lot easier calling her on the phone and just talking. I can do that. She's pretty chill, and if I needed money, I could call her right now. She'd send me
Sure,
money immediately.
sure. Yeah.
No questions. And she takes care of all my mail. So there's a lot. Having her at a distance is pleasant, and I feel relaxed. But certainly when I'm around her, on eggshells every single day, it's hard.
Yeah, so one thing I do struggle with is feeling jealous somewhat when I go to, you know, a friend's house or ex-girlfriend's house or girlfriend's house, and I see that loving relationship and how warm they are with each other. That sometimes sets me off and makes me think, I
Mm,
wish I had this. But there's nothing you can do about it, and you just got to accept it and realize that you have control over your own emotions and feelings, and to bring yourself back into a good state and be happy about it.
yeah.
I have a question. You've got two kids who are
Mm.
both grown up now. How do you think your relationship with your mother and your father, who we haven't even got into yet, has influenced you as a parent and trying to do things differently?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I did is like I told myself that this is stuff that I'm not going to do with my own children. I'm not going to be drunk around them. I'm not going to drink around them. I'm not going to allow them to drink when they're 14, 15 years old like my parents did with me. That's just going to be one of the rules. I vowed to never get angry, but fell short on that one. When you're dealing with teenagers, it's
Kids
it's
can be dickheads,
inevitable.
right?
Yeah, yeah. So, but my anger, was very muted, I guess you could say. So I was good about that, and I think my kids would probably say that, they've only seen me angry maybe a handful of times. I think maybe if you talk to anybody, they would say me being like really elevated, just pissed off, is few and far, very rare occasion.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I raised them, I never got hugged. I don't know if my mom ever hugged or kissed me, said I love. We don't say I love you in my family, not my immediate family. My daughters,
No.
every time, every time we talk, I love you, and I tell them and I tell them my feelings. I had a friend die. I let them see me cry. I told them that I need some time to myself because I just need to grieve my friend, and they were able to see healthy behaviors out of me to and I modeled that for them. And I tried really hard. It took me a long time to get it. I mean, I was 18 years old when I had my youngest, and she got to see me at the worst, and then she saw me in the full recovery, you know. So it was good.
Well done, man. I mean, I just want to say I'm proud of you as someone who, yeah, has seen bad parenting. It's nice to hear that you're breaking the cycle. It's never
I
perfect,
sure hope so.
but
I sure
as
hope
long as
so.
you can, as long as you can do a much better job than what we went through, that's the
Mhm.
game, right? That's the whole point of my podcast, is to try
Yeah,
and educate
yeah,
people about what can happen if we treat young children, young people very, very poorly. That they can end
yep,
up in prison or, like me, a bit of a mess until they get older in life and they
yeah,
figure things out. So
yeah,
well done, buddy. I'm proud of you. Seriously.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thanks, man. No, I appreciate
Uh,
that. Because we don't say that enough as men. We
no,
don't say that enough to other
no,
men. We really don't.
no.
And
I've,
and
I've,
it needs to be normalized. It really does. And even I love you. Like I saw a thing where somebody was like, we need to normalize men telling other men that they love them, and I was like, yeah, that is a great idea, but to implicate it was next to impossible. It is
oh,
impossible to
that's
actually
gay,
do.
man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It'd be like, yeah, fucking faggot. Yeah, I can already hear
Yeah,
it.
it's I
And I wish it was normalized. I really do. I mean, it's not uh, just because I think it's nice to know that your friends care about you, you know, and
yeah,
you can love your friends. I mean, I have guys in my life that if they died, I'd be really sad.
devastated.
I
Yeah,
would be
for sure.
really heartbroken, and I love them like that I would my brother. So I think it would be okay to say that. It should be okay to say that.
Yeah, it's a shame that it's not said more. And we spoke about friendship groups at the start of the conversation. There isn't enough of that in my friendship, or what I'd considered my friendship circle. And there is just drunken tomfoolery and stupidness,
Hmm.
and hiding away their emotions. I'm curious, and now thinking about them, I'm curious what their experiences are. I've got one friend from that group who I am still relatively close with, and we have dug into some of his emotions and his past, and he struggled with sex addiction, for example. And it's nice to be able to talk about those things. But yeah, as a whole, men, we just don't, and it needs to be normalized, like you said. And I hope that people watching this conversation can maybe gain some comfort
Yeah.
from the fact
Or
that
just
they
a little
can
bit of
just be.
confidence to kind of break that, even if it's just a little bit. One time, you take a chance and you're vulnerable and you say, "Hey, man, what you said hurt me, and I'm kind of hurt by what happened or whatever, however you want to put it, but be vulnerable, you know."
Sometimes I found, because I said that recently because I'd been hurt by some things, and you just get brushed off "Ugh,"
Yeah,
like
no,
it doesn't
I know.
matter. And
You're just like
now,
you're treated
now
like a pussy. Treated like a pussy.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is ironic considering we've all come from a pussy. So pussy's actually like this strong thing, but
yeah.
it's used as
I
an
know,
insult. It's nuts.
I know.
I'm now thinking because my father, as much as he failed me in some ways, did also try to be a kind and loving, nurturing person, and I wonder if that's where I got my relationship and my dynamics of care and love towards other men from. We haven't touched on your father, and I'm curious about your relationship with him,
Yeah.
if you're happy to talk about that.
Well, yeah, it was my dad died 2 years ago, March, 3 years ago maybe. And my dad was always kind of just this like person in the house. I didn't really learn much from him. He didn't give me any fatherly advice. He did a little bit, like with work ethic. Like I got my work ethic from him, where it's like, you show up, you do the best you can, you work hard, and I got that from him. But beyond that, nothing else. But when he
Was he the
died, it was
provider? Was he the provider of the house?
no, no. I don't even know where my parents got their money, to be honest. Like we grew up like rich kids, and I have no idea where the money came from. I don't have a clue. My dad owned a business for a short time, but he lost it, and after that, they worked very irregular jobs for all through my childhood. I don't know how they afforded what we had. We had a lot growing up.
Maybe you'll never know. But I'm sorry I interrupted you. You said
Yeah.
when your father died. What were you going to say? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, when my father died, but we kind of knew it was coming. I mean, he never took care of himself. It was always fried food. He wouldn't get any exercise. He just sat and watched TV day in and day out. And, it was one of those things where, he probably had a little bit of depression trying to, and that's how he dealt with it, is just by watching TV and eating fried food. So we knew he was going to die young. And when he was essentially on his deathbed, he decided he wanted to die. He was a he said, "I just don't want to take this oxygen anymore. I'm tired of doing the needle thing. I don't want to give blood anymore. I'm done." Like, and they're like, "Are you sure this is what you want?" And they just took the oxygen off, and he just passed. In about 20 minutes. And I mean, he could have lived a lot longer if he maintained the oxygen. He just chose not to. But when he when it was that time, I had a lot of regret, a lot of regret, and I did not treat my dad very well. I couldn't stand talking to him sometimes because he would complain. He's very misogynistic and racist, and he would just say stuff that just was not okay with me. That he thought was funny, but they were trashy and not funny at all. And so I didn't want to talk to him. And I don't watch football, American football. I don't watch it at all, but I did because of him. I cared about football because of him, and it gave me something else to talk to him about other than
Hmm. Something
current
you could bond
events.
over.
Yeah, something we can bond over, exactly. And I did feel like we bonded over that a little bit, and I felt a connection with my dad. And I reflected back on how I treated him when he would call me, and I'd just be like so annoyed, and he would just call and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "Hey, Dad, that's good." He's like, "All right, I just wanted to check in, talk to you later," and I just could not stand talking to him. And then I reflected when he was, when it was time. I just thought about all those times that I just brushed him off and how he must have felt when I was just like, "I don't want to even talk to you." I didn't say it, but I acted that way, you know. And I just sobbed, dude. I mean, it was ugly cry. Like when you're a kid and you like watch a movie and a dog dies and you get that freaking that kind of
Yeah.
cry. That was what I had when my dad died. It was like that real ugly, nasty, can't breathe cry. And I just was like, it was the whole family was in the room. Everybody was in the room. And I was like, everyone, I just need to talk to my dad alone for a second. So they all just left. And I just laid it out. I just laid it all out. I was like, Dad, I don't want you to die. And I'm sorry for how I treated you. And I was like, Dad, can you just come back just for a little bit so we can end on a good note, you know? And I just like was begging him to come back. And of course he didn't. And then uh, that was it, you know, and I just stormed off and uh, I went in the car and I fell asleep. I fell asleep because I had to drive like 10 hours to see him in the hospital. And I get a phone call and they're like, it's done. He died. And I was like, fuck. And my kids were there and they're crying. And it sucked. It really did. And they don't prepare you for death. I mean,
No.
nothing could have prepared me for that.
I'm really, really sorry to hear. It's
I mean,
difficult, and especially
it's all good though, because, you know, I learned something. From it, you know, and I'm not going to have those regrets again. You know, I make it a point to tell the family, and I was like, man, I'm just proud of you. I'm proud of what you've done, and I appreciate you, and it changed me, and I'm grateful for it. It sucks that it had hurt at the time, you know. I wish I could just be like I am, and you know, but if that hadn't happened, kind of defined me in that moment.
I'm really sorry, and I'm glad to hear that you've at least found some healing on that. It's always difficult when you have a distant relationship with a parent like that and a father. It's difficult. I think you also mourn the relationship that you maybe could have had, like you said, or the relationship you see
It,
other people having. I
you're
can,
exactly right. You're exactly right.
well, and that's the thing, I can totally relate. My father died in January, and we were not always that close. In the last couple of years, we became close. But I went to Australia in January to see an old ex-girlfriend. I needed some closure. I went to see her, and my father had kind of hidden from me how bad his illness was. He had bowel cancer, and I didn't know how sick he was until I got a call on the Tuesday saying, you need to get back. And he died Friday night. And so I never got to say goodbye to him, and I never got that, you know, those memories with him. And I have that
Oh
regret
man,
because
oh dude,
it's okay.
that
But
sucks, man.
I don't want to
Damn.
make it about me because we're talking about
Yeah,
you.
I
But
know, but
I'm just saying
still,
that
yeah.
I can relate.
Damn.
Um,
Yeah,
it's what
that's
slowed me
heavy.
down from. Well, yeah, thank you. It is, but also the experiences that I've been through in my whole life, and also through my relationship with him, and how he allowed my mother to bully me and abuse me the way she did. It leaves me very
Yeah.
conflicted about the whole thing. It's been very difficult because also he got married a few months before he died, and this woman, essentially my stepmother, is just going to take all of his money and not leave anything for us as kids, which is also
Yeah, that's
very
messed up.
painful and messed up. And in my opinion, and I know this is shared through other people in the family, we believe that he may have been manipulated in his last few days and months to do that because he was a financial advisor and his job was to set up pensions and life insurance and wills for
Oh,
people. And he didn't have his own stuff set up. And it's crazy to think that
yeah, that
he
is
did that.
crazy to think. Yeah,
So
that is wild.
in my
Dang.
opinion, there's been some foul play there, even though it
Yeah,
can't be
for
proved. And
sure.
I don't want to say too much more because of legal trouble and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't want to go
Dang.
down that road. But that loss of figure in your life who you still, even though it wasn't a perfect relationship, it's still very, very painful. And
And it's even though, yeah, yeah, it was an important relationship, you know, it was an important one. And I
one
didn't
of your
know
most
that till the
important,
end.
right?
Yeah. And it wasn't, and I didn't know that. I didn't know how important it was. And to me, it's like, you don't know what you got till it's gone kind of thing. And, you know, it sucks because I still think about it. You know, I'm like, man, I wish I could tell my dad where I'm at. He never got to see me come over here. He didn't get to see me do these cool things that I'm doing, you know, and
And thrive
it
the way you're
sucks.
thriving.
Yeah, thrive. Yeah, he didn't get to see me. He got to experience me in a lot of other ways, but not this way, and it sucks because he missed out. and I couldn't show him how awesome life can be for some of his kids sometimes.
But you also missed out yourself. Don't forget you in this. And the only way that I
Yeah.
can, the only way for me that I've managed this pain is to think that I can take forward the lessons that I've learned from him, and everything that I am is as a result of what I've been through and the things that I've seen. And I'm very finally in my life after 30 odd years where I haven't been, where I've really disliked myself. I'm incredibly proud of who I am. And
Mm,
that's because of everything that I've seen. And so I'm incredibly proud, and I love my father, because without him, both in the good ways and the ways he failed me, I wouldn't be who I am. And he is strangely, I get emotional, he's strangely one of the biggest driving factors for me in my life, even though we only had a real relationship in the last like 2.5 years of his life. I don't know what else you can do. You can only take forward and do the best by them and try and make them proud. And I hope
yeah,
he's looking down at me and I make him proud in some way. What else?
yeah,
What else can you do? But you have to keep moving forward. You know.
yeah. Because that's what they'd want. It's that they'd want you to keep just power on through it. And that's all you can do, and it sucks. It
I
sucks.
want
It's
to.
hard.
I think if it's all right with you, you and I are going to have these conversations again. I think you and I could talk for a
Yeah,
fair
yeah, for
time
sure.
about
Yeah.
stuff. But we have a nice bond in that sense. I want to dive around back to your experience with prison, because your father must have been alive when you went
Mhm.
to prison. How was
Yep.
that for them, and how did it make you feel knowing that they knew you'd been to prison? Was that difficult for you?
No,
There must be
the
there's a
thing
whole
is,
host of emotions there to unwrap.
yeah, yeah. So I think for them, I think it was like, okay, it's like we're not surprised. It's just a matter of time. And I think for them, I think they were a little shocked, if anything, probably. And I have to speculate because I've never talked to them about it. I've never asked them, what do you guys think when this happened? But I imagine they were probably pretty shocked when why I was in there. They would have thought maybe it would have been something like fraud or something like that, not something
White collar
as
crime.
big as it was. Yeah, as big as it was. And so, but no, I had a lot of support, and um, I didn't feel ashamed or anything like that. I felt good. I mean, I felt as good as you can about those kind of things. When it comes to the family. So I got to give them credit for that. Because I probably, who knows, if they would have shamed me, I still might not have be where I'm at today.
Made it through.
I might still be where I was at because I got support.
We also spoke earlier about our shared belief that people within prison have had some terrible experiences in their childhood. I'm curious to learn more about your experience while you were on the inside, if that's all right, and some of the dark
Yeah,
shit that you might have seen. Is that okay if we put
yeah,
it there?
yeah. So yeah, there was a bunch. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of like darkness, so to speak. I mean, there was an argument over the remote, over the TV remote, and this guy just started beating the shit out of this other guy, and he just didn't stop, and he died. The guy died, and everyone just sat there and watched it, because you don't get involved in that stuff. You just don't, because then
Why not?
it's some kind of unwritten rule kind of thing where that's none of your business, don't get involved, and then it's almost like you're going to take sides, and it's an us and them thing. So if you like get involved to break up this fight, you're like on this guy's side. I don't know. I don't understand it, but it was some kind of unwritten thing. And also, another thing is, you don't talk to snitches. You just don't talk to someone who's snitched. That's just an unwritten rule. You don't do it. If you do, you're just as guilty as they are. You're part of them, and that happened to me. That was one thing that happened. And I was lucky enough that I was so naive that everyone's like, yeah, dude, we're going to just don't do this again next time. Because this kid, I was, a cellmate with him, and it turns out he was this big snitch. I mean, he snitched out on a bunch of people bad. And I mean, it wasn't like he caught him doing it and told on him. He was an active participant. And
Oh,
and
so he,
then
he was a protected
like a
witness.
Yeah, yep. And I was celling with them. Well, I got out of the lockdown unit, and then or I got out of the lockdown unit to the population. Then later he came in, and I vouched for him. I was like, yeah, this is a good guy. And they're like, no, no, he's not. And then they just went up there, and I don't know what they said, what they told him, but they went in the cell with him, and next thing I know, he's pushing the button. I need to get out of here. And I was
You
like,
got hurt?
guys, no, nobody got hurt in that one. No one got hurt in that one, but he's just like, he comes out and he's like, come on, guys, this is bullshit. And they're like, we know what you did. And then he looks at me and he's like, Justin, tell him. And I just put my head down. I just went like that. And it went against everything that was in my nature. And I just bowed my head and I just let it happen. And they, uh, they took him out, moved him. All the cops came in and was like, you guys are, you can't do that. Knock it off. Made us all walk down and gave us a stern warning not to do that. And then we just went about it. But there was that, and there was a lot of substances getting snuck in there and stuff, and people were. I mean, there was as much in there as there was outside. There's nobody sober in there if they don't want to
I,
be.
I've,
You know.
I've always heard this, and I find it baffling that that is the case.
Yeah, they weren't even quiet about it. That was what blew my mind. They weren't even quiet about it.
Really?
I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd just smell weed from them smoking, and I was like, "What? How are you? Like, how do they not know? How do they not know this is happening right now?"
Well, they obviously do
Oh, it's
know. They
weird.
just don't give a shit, right?
Yeah, so they could be. I don't know. When I was a CO, if we smelled weed, it would have been a full lockdown. We'd have stripped every one of those cells down to the bare bottoms, man, to just the
Really.
metal, looking for that. So I don't know. Maybe it's just because of where I was at. It's just different attitudes. I don't know.
Did you struggle with? Sorry. Did you struggle with addictions while you were on the inside as well? Were you
Not at all.
using? Were you
Not
drinking?
at all.
No.
Not at all.
What about
Nope.
alcohol? Does
It was.
alcohol get into prisons?
They make it. You can make it. It's pretty easy to make. You just get like orange
Cool.
juice and a bunch of sugar, and then you wrap it in like a towel and in a plastic. Or first you put it in a plastic bag, and then you just wrap it in a towel, keep it warm, and you burp it. You'd see them out there like burping the little thing and call it pruno. It's
Okay.
kind of a cool process, but no, I had no desire. At that point, it just kind of left me. I was at peace. I was at peace in there. At first, I wasn't, but after about 2 months, I was no cares. I was carefree.
I feel like your character as well. You probably got on with people on the inside. Is that right? They
Yeah, I
kind of
did.
left you alone.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just kind of blended in, and I kind of look the part too. I have a lot of tattoos. It goes all the way from my neck down. I kind of look the part, and everyone just kind of left me alone. And that's kind of another unwritten rule too. It just let people do their time. If somebody's in there just to do time, let them do it. They don't mess around with people that don't aren't looking for trouble. They respect that, and I felt very respected in there.
You're kind of all in it together, and you understand
Hmm.
what you're all struggling with. And especially as we spoke about earlier, you don't get that empathy from outside, from the guards and the like.
You're
You
right.
have to
You're
have some
right.
empathy for each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there was a little bit of that in there because sometimes we would all go out and hey, you couldn't get anything from the commissary. Here's a chocolate muffin, and there was a lot of that, taking care of each other. But you had to make sure you had to be careful who you're hanging out with because that stuff mattered. Now, me being white mattered, and you don't there's like Aryan Nation, and then there's like Southern Mexicans, and then there's Northern Mexicans, and there's that whole gang thing blew my mind. Like I got approached all the time about it, and I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I learned a lot about the gang culture in there as far as who allied with who, and it was just really strange to me. I'm like, how do you know who's a Northern Mexican and a Southern Mexican other than you just made a choice to do that? You just chose to be that, you
I
know?
guess for them, they hear the accent maybe. But for you
Oh,
and
it
I
could
who are
be.
white,
Yeah,
especially me who's a
yeah,
Brit, I have no idea.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
weird.
But
I
they it
Yeah.
was funny because my first interaction is I was just walking around and this guy goes, he's like, "Hey, you part of the wood pile?" And I had no idea what that meant, and I just
What does
shrugged
that
it
mean?
off. So peckerwood is like Aryan Nation. So if
Okay.
you ever see somebody with a Woody Woodpecker tattoo,
Yeah.
that's a white supremacist Aryan Nation
Really?
tattoo. That's a way they communicate to each other, like, hey, you know. And woodpile meant Woody Woodpecker, part of the white
Mm,
Aryan Nation, and he was a
okay.
a Sereno. They call it was a Sereno. He's like, hey, you part of the woodpile? And I was like, I had no idea what that meant. I was like, just kind of ignored it. And then he's like, hey, you want to work out? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And then that's what kind of hit it off, my stint there, and it was good. It was a positive experience. I liked
It's
it. I'm not afraid to admit that. I kind of liked it there. Made good
well,
friend. I mean, I made good friends in there. When
yeah, to pass the
all
time.
bets were off when you got out. All bets were off when you got out. But they took care of me. Took care of me.
Do you keep in touch with anyone from your time
I
at all?
did for years, and they slowly disappeared. There was a guy, if you want to look him up, his name's Jared Wyatt. I kept in contact with him. He's got quite the backstory on him. Pretty
Okay.
violent incident. And yeah, I kept in contact with him through there. He's the reason why I got into fighting. Like I was really out of shape. I got into MMA because of him. He showed me all the fighting stuff, and as soon as I got out, I started doing it, and I have 2 boxing matches under my belt, and it was because of him. There was another guy named Rico Benavides that he was the one that was like, hey, part of the woodpile. I kept in contact with him for years, and then he got back into drugs and disappeared. And then there was another guy named Josiah Miller, who you can look him up, has quite
What
a
was his name?
crazy
Sorry.
history too.
What was his
Josiah
name?
Miller. Josiah Miller.
Josiah Miller. I'm going to have to work out how to spell that. Okay. What's his
Yeah,
story?
and you can just type in like Del Norte County or Crescent City, California. But he like got accused of murder, and he denies it. And if you would have met him, you would not even think this man was capable of murder at all.
Okay.
He was like
Okay.
this Seventh Day Adventist, and he was just like really hardcore religious guy, very kind and gentle, and meek and fragile. You know, he just didn't seem like he was capable of murder. And then when I got out, we kept in touch and we kept writing letters. And then one day he sent me a photo, and I was like, if I would have walked by him 100 times, I would have never known him. Like he was this short,
What is
pudgy guy
this?
before I known him, and he was
Yeah.
just short and pudgy, had like this scraggly hair, and he just was out of shape. That photo, he was ripped out of his goddamn mind, dude. He was just built, shaved his head, had this awesome beard, and I was like, "Who are you?" I was like, I would have recognized him. And his letters were as kind and gentle as how I knew him, but he just looked like this monster.
Yeah.
It was wild what jail what it did to him. I mean, I think it was a positive. I think it was a positive transformation for
Kind
him.
of sounds like
But
it. Well, that's the idea
yeah,
of prison, really, is to go in and correct your behavior. So
yeah,
it's
rehabilitate, right? That's
you
the
hear so many stories about people going in and then becoming institutionalized. Like you said, your laundry is done for you, your food is done, like the
That's
TV,
nice.
it's chill.
Yeah.
But then you hear stories about people just reoffending and going straight back in
Keep
because they're
going in and out.
institutionalized. I think
Revolving revolving door. Yeah.
I imagine that has something to do with the system, the prison you go into as well. We'll come back to that quickly because I
Hmm.
just looked up Jared Wyatt out of interest. MMA fighter accused of ripping out friend's heart and tongue pleads
Yep.
guilty to murder.
Yep. That's Jared Wyatt.
I think
He's the
that must
reason
have been
why.
that must have been after your time. I think that happened
No. No. What
before.
time?
That's
What
why he
year
was
is
in.
that? Yeah,
This
that's
is
why he got there.
2012.
Yep. That was it then. Yeah. It was about 3 months before for me, something like that. It was just a few months before that happened. A few months before mine.
Before you went in or before you got out.
Yeah. Before I got in. Yeah.
It's interesting because you're and we're going back to now different prisons you go into. Someone like Jared Wyatt, who's committed quite a serious crime and in a very violent way, must have got something like 25, 30 years minimum. to be in the same prison as you, getting 9 months
Yep.
essentially for
Yep.
being a drunken idiot, really.
Well, yeah, yeah. So for that was before he got sentencing. So when he got sentenced, he was still going to trial and doing all that. But he ended up in San Quentin. I went there for, geez, what, a month or something. I don't know. It wasn't very long, but that was easy. That was not a big deal. But yeah, he was in county. There's county, and then there's like prison. At that time, we were both in county. It was Del Norte County, California.
And then now reflecting on being in different prisons, I think that has a different effect on you. So I saw a documentary about super prisons in
Mhm.
America, which hold some of the most violent criminals, and you're expected to fight when you get in there and prove your
Maybe.
toughness, whatever. Did that anything of like that sort happen to you? Nothing
No.
at all.
No, I never saw anything like that either. Like unless it you're looking for it, it happened. But no, I never felt threatened there. I mean, it was scary at first, but once I kind of started learning everything, there's like this unwritten thing. If you're going to do your time, let them do their time. It's a respect thing,
Mm.
depending on what your crime is. Mine wasn't so bad that they didn't want, they didn't dislike me. But if you're in there for something like harming a child,
Child porn.
you're gonna be fighting.
Well,
You're gonna
that's a nice way of looping back round to the subject because, from a very deep personal perspective, a lot of people I think are on the inside who have committed crimes have been through some very brutal, difficult, hard childhoods in whatever way that I can certainly relate to. And then knowing that someone has come in for, you know, assaulting a child or sexually assaulting, rape of a young child, obviously, it's wrong on every sense, but it's deeply personal to people like that because they know exactly where
mm,
it's where they've come from,
yeah,
and
yeah.
being triggered isn't the right word, but it hurts them to their core, I
Well,
imagine. So,
that's I think triggered. I think triggered is exactly the right word for that. I mean, you think about it. They see somebody that harmed a kid, that they're gonna remember all that crap that happened to them. That stuff. Your body doesn't forget. I think there's a book called that. It's like your body never forgets, and it's a really good book, and it talks about that exact stuff, where these things that happen to you as a child never goes away. It's like embedded into you your entire life.
talking to you more and more now, I really want this podcast to be successful in so way so I can go into prisons and have these sorts of conversations with
Yeah.
inmates to try and shed some light
Mhm.
and prove that actually they've been through some very difficult thing. I obviously there are situations where some criminals who have, I don't know, been chopping people up and eating their bodies and whatever, and mass rapists and people who are unfortunately so gone that they can't be fixed, that they just need to be locked away.
Yeah, I agree. Yep,
But there
I
are
agree.
a whole host of other people, and I think the vast majority who have just been through some really difficult shit and need some people to talk to and need therapy and need help and need someone who might understand them. Obviously, these incredibly violent criminals as well, they've come from the same place and they do just to some extent need also some compassion and some understanding that it's not always their fault that they've been turned into this monster. But the vast
I know.
majority of
I know.
criminals, I think,
Mhm.
could really just do with some help and some compassion and some understanding.
I agree. I agree 100%. I think, like you said, it's the majority. And there's those outliers, like there's going to always be that just want to harm people. I think those, but I still think they're a victim in some way too. I think they
They
may have
are.
crossed a line of no hope. They may have crossed that line where there's just no hope and they need to be locked away for the rest of their lives to protect the public, right? They just need to be locked away. But I
Yeah.
think they are still a victim of their childhood too. I don't think they were just born that way.
No. And I think that's where society misunderstands and needs educating. Do you mind just come down? You're out of shot. Your head is like above the camera somewhat. Yeah. Uh, while we're taking this pause, I see you looking off screen. We've been talking for like an hour and a half. It's been a really good conversation. Do you want to leave it there and pick up another
Yeah,
time?
yeah, actually,
I,
that would be better. Yeah. for
I'm
me.
really
Yeah,
enjoying
I
the
appreciate that.
conversation, and
Yeah.
I don't. That's totally fine, and I'm not in any way offended. But I'm really enjoying this conversation. In fact, I can just stop recording. I'm really enjoying the conversation. I'd love to talk to you again and carry on, because I
Mhm.
think we could dive into some things if you'd like, if you'd be down.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love this. I love this kind of stuff. I love these are some of the things that I've been on probably 4 or 5 different ones kind of talking about the similar stuff because I actually look for creative outlets myself in a way to
Okay.
express kind of my thoughts and views in a way that I feel like I can be beneficial, you know.
Well, I don't really know how to wrap up. Do you know what? I'm just going to end, and you and I can talk off
Okay.
camera.